This is Twin City Talk, and this week we are talking to Algenon Cash, who runs Eat Drink Triad and gets to have all the amazing food in the area. Hi, Algenon.
Hey, how y'all doing?
So tell us a little bit about Eat Drink Triad first.
Yeah, it started out as something that was really more of a passion project of mine, something that I created in 2020 as a response to what was going on with COVID. Part of my background is advocacy work, and I've worked with a lot of elected officials and community leaders on different public policy issues. And so when COVID hit, I could sort of immediately recognize that was a disaster for a lot of our restaurant, bar, and brewery owners here in the region. And so I created Eat Drink Triad more as an advocacy effort to just work with elected officials and community leaders, and we aligned ourselves with the Independent Restaurant Coalition at a national level. We worked with them to get the Restaurant Act passed through Congress, which was an $86 billion grant program that supported restaurants recovering from COVID. And so that was a lot of the energy that started us out. And then as COVID started to subside and a lot of the government subsidies and support was going away, I then shifted Eat Drink Triad into the marketing and outreach program that you see today.
Very cool.
So I'm sure the list is long, but name some of your favorite restaurants here in Winston.
Oh man,
Don't you love that question?
it's like I never answer that question. That's an impossible question to answer. One, there are just so many good ones, and if I start naming some, I'll forget some, and those will be.
So let me reframe the question then, because as the man who ate the town, and we have a long relationship,
Sure.
you and me, how I answer that is, if I'm walking out this building today, where are you going? So that doesn't mean that's your favorite.
Yeah.
So you can say where you're going, whether you go there or not, and it kind of skirts that whole question.
Well, I do have lunch planned later today at Hungry Palate. So and they are participating in Eat Drink Triad Restaurant Week, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, so that's coming up. Tell us about that and the dates and who's involved.
Yeah, this will be our fourth year doing Restaurant Week. Something I'm very proud of. We started out 4 years ago with 26 restaurants participating. This year, I'm proud to say we'll have nearly 60 restaurants participating. The thing I'm really proud of is that those 60 restaurants are not all in Winston-Salem. They're actually spread out through the Triad. So it's a true regional effort and a regional campaign. We've got 6 different cities that are participating in Restaurant Week this year. High Point, Greensboro, Winston, which are the usual suspects. But then we also have Clemens, Lexington, and Asheboro, which is really exciting. So Restaurant Week kicks off October 14th through the 20th. It runs an entire week. In addition to all the great specials and deals that these restaurants are offering all week long, your audience can go on to our website at eatdrinktriadrestaurantweek.com. And there's a ton of events too, Suzy, that are happening all week long. We've got private dinners and showcase events and tomato sandwich eating contest and you name it, it's happening during Restaurant Week.
If you had a personal mascot, what would it be?
Oh man, that's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever actually
Algenon
been
is
asked
his
that.
personal mascot.
I don't think I've ever been asked that question. I'm not. Tim, you got any advice on how to answer?
I think because you're wearing it, right? I could see a big jar of Duke's mayonnaise with hands coming out with a Zestos shirt on as well. So
Certainly. I'm a huge fan of Duke's Mayo. Thank you for actually recognizing the shirt that I'm wearing today because Duke's Mayo, I should have said this, they actually are a huge partner for Restaurant Week. It would be virtually impossible if they weren't supporting the effort. They really make it so that the restaurants that are participating in the week don't have to pay. So all these restaurants that you see participating, they get all this marketing, they get all this visibility and outreach which would be virtually impossible without Duke's Mayo. So, Tim, thank you for noticing
Absolutely.
and getting a plug in there for those guys.
So outside of the food and the restaurants, what do you love about Winston?
Oh man, I've been here my entire life. So I was born and raised in East Winston. I have watched this entire city and community change and shift and revitalize and remake itself over my 45 years here. I do think we have an incredible food scene, but beyond that, we just have an incredible community. A lot of great, talented people come out of Winston-Salem. You still have a lot of those same bigger city options, I guess you could say, in terms of things and experiences that you might want, but it still very much has a small town feel. And, I enjoy being able to walk down 4th Street and know people's names and people know my name. And so, yeah, I've been here my entire life. I've flirted with the idea a few times of leaving Winston-Salem and going off and doing something in the big city, as they say. But I continue to really try to use my time, talent, and treasure right here in Winston-Salem.
So is there anything you'd like to see happen in Winston's future?
Oh yeah, a lot. I mean, I as much as it's sort of like having a child, right? Like you love your kid, but you still always see the unrecognized potential in your child as well, right? And so I think Winston-Salem has so much unrealized potential. Like we at one time we were the largest city in the state of North Carolina. I mean, we have turned out amazing corporations like Piedmont Airlines and Haynes and Sara Lee and RJ Reynolds and Krispy Kreme and BB&T and Wachovia. I mean, there's just been so many greats that have passed through this
Texas
community.
Pete.
Texas Pete, another great one. Amar, I mean, again, it's like naming your favorite restaurant. You get into it and you're going to miss somebody. But I would say that in the last 10 or 15 years, we've not had the same kind of performance and we've not had the same kind of success with attracting large corporations to this community. So that is something that I think our community leaders and our elected officials and our economic developers, I think that's something they got to be looking a lot harder at. I mean, we are now down to just one publicly traded company here in Winston-Salem, and that's Haynes. A lot of people believe they're in the process of downsizing even further. So we've got to tap into that limitless potential that I know is here in Winston-Salem, and I think we've got to improve the way that we get out and proactively sell this community. We can't just sit here and rest on our laurels and think that the next big company is going to show up. I think we got to go out and find them, and I think we've got to tell them all the great reasons why they want to be in Winston-Salem.
I'll join in the effort to bring people in if you want. We can start a coalition of people who love Winston and why we need to bring people here. I'm all for it.
You say that, and I'd tell you one of the things that I've been saying. I wrote an article for the Winston-Salem Chronicle recently that got picked up by Carolina Journal, talking about a little bit of the decline that we've had in our community related to corporate enterprises. And I've been asked a lot of times, why did I write that article? Well, part of what I'm hoping for is exactly what you just said. I would love to create or trigger a community awakening. Like, I do think we have this really great community, but a lot of us don't recognize it either. Like, some of us are not fully aware. Some of us are not fully conscious to what's going on right now in Winston-Salem. And I think if we shifted into this community awakening and we got more people doing exactly what you just said, which is, tell 5 of your friends in another state how great Winston-Salem is. But I don't think we can just sit here and wait on Mayor Joins and wait on Mark Owens at the chamber and wait on all these people that are doing great work. We also have to be a part of that story too.
Yeah, the growth of Winston has been tremendous. I mean, you grew up here, I grew up here. The difference in where we are now in terms of the way that it's expanded in positive ways. And we were talking about downtown being a place that you wouldn't want to go to after dark, not that long ago. And now it's this prolific, incredible place. The community spirit has grown in abundance. We keep getting ranked in some of the best places to live or to retire, to raise a family in these national surveys and publications. So on the one hand, it's becoming unbelievable in terms of its offerings. Like you said, it's much like a large city but still maintains its charm. But if you can get the corporations and the larger companies to recognize that translates to a success in the marketplace with the community that's growing the way that it is. I think you're onto something. So the advocacy behind people, that if you bring people here, they can see what's remarkable about this town, they'd be all the more likely to plant roots here. And the logistics of this city are outstanding, and that's another big piece that I think gets left out. We have our own small airport here, which is excellent for businesses if they need it. Obviously, highway transportation, all that is excellent also. So I'm for it. Let's do it. Anybody else who wants to come join us, listening, you can reach out to Algenon.
So Algenon,
Yeah, put me on the spot.
I'm thinking of what you said, because Alan and Mark and all those do great job, but I equate it to like being on the PTA.
Sure.
The PTA board is the only ones that's doing anything. The actual other PTA people are just waiting to see what we do. And we need to stop waiting to see what they do. Let them do their work.
Sure.
Actually, if we took a lot off their plate, they could get more done.
Exactly.
And we could perpetuate the awesomeness that is this town.
We have we're talking about food today, but we've got some great ingredients to make some incredible dishes here in Winston-Salem.
Sure.
I mean, when you look at our talent pool, when you look at our education, you've got 11 major colleges and universities right here in our backyard. You look at the School of the Arts. That's probably one of the biggest hidden gems in Winston-Salem. There's literally students coming not from all over the country, but all over the world are coming here to go to that institution. That's the same thing with Salem. That's the same thing with Wake Forest. I used to be a part of the executive partners program at the Wake Business School, where I would mentor students that were coming here from other countries. So we have a lot of the right ingredients, but we also don't do a great job of retaining that talent, right? So these people come into our community, we educate them, we mentor them, we coach them, but then because they don't see a reason to stay, they go off, they take all that intellectual talent and all that leadership, and they go to somebody else's community and help build that up. And then maybe when they get married and now they've got 3 kids and they remember, oh man, I love that little town, Winston-Salem, they go back to Winston and they come here. That's a great thing. We want to continue that. But the challenge with that is that you're missing those families during their formative years. You're missing them while they're forming the family, while they're buying their first house, while they're doing a lot
while
of
they're really into what they just built as a business or helped build as a business.
Yes.
Because you're right, they get all excited about what they're getting ready to do. Well, let's see, I don't have anything to do here. I'm just going to go to Charlotte, or I'm going to go to Raleigh, or I'm going to Richmond, or I'm going wherever, and then come back. But you're right. We need to entice people to remain here when they decide that they're going to take over the world. Take over the world from here. Don't go somewhere else to do that.
Yes.
Which begs
just
the
like
question.
Richard Joshua Reynolds did.
Yeah.
This is true, and Haynes and so forth. Man, they all did
Yeah.
it. It begs the question of, okay, so what's, and maybe this is a conversation for another time, but what is that next step? Because to me, this city sells itself in so many ways. You just have to get people to see it all, and to experience it all, to really work their fingers into the clay of it, and you start to recognize what's remarkable about this town. To me, it's, as I said, it's an easy sell, but it does beg that question of, okay, so what is the way in which we incentivize those people not just to come here, but to want to stay, to
increase
bring
their
their
retention.
passion to it? And to me, it's probably a pretty small step. I don't think that that's some grand notion that we have to change parts of our infrastructure or the way that we treat businesses here to do that. It's just getting them to recognize what can be done.
Yeah, I don't think I think you're right, Burgess. It's not that the infrastructure isn't already here. One of the biggest issues that I see that might be preventing a little bit of what we're talking about is everyone in this community, Suzy, they don't necessarily feel engaged. Okay, so you can have a community that's very strong when it comes to economic capital. We all agree. When you look around this community, there's a lot of money in Winston-Salem. A lot of people have made good money and have retired here in Winston-Salem. But I think when you look at our social capital, like the ability for different people to work together, to trust one another, to move in lockstep going forward, that is where I don't see an abundance right now in Winston-Salem. There are a lot of factions within the community that don't necessarily trust one another. If you go to the east side of town, if you go east of 52, a lot of these people, they look back and they see what's happening downtown. They don't quite understand it. They don't see their community changing and growing the same way we've seen 4th Street and Trade Street and all these great projects down here. So the social capital in the community has deteriorated. When you don't have social capital, you don't have trust. And progress can only move at the speed of trust, okay? So I think what we have to do is be able to get people back on board through this community awakening that I'm describing. People have to start trusting one another again. And then as we start to have a limitless perspective and belief system, then we will have limitless opportunity.
I like the way you said that. It was really well put. I think it's interesting that you said that you feel like it's deteriorating. I personally hadn't noticed a deteriorating. I haven't necessarily noticed a proliferation of it either. But I'm curious what made you use that word.
Yeah, I just think that I spent a lot of time downtown. Like before we started the show, I talked a little bit about how I lived downtown at one point. I've spent a lot of time downtown. I think the cohesion and the community spirit that I heard a moment ago that exists in the downtown community, it doesn't actually exist in every community in Winston-Salem. So like Tim used to spend a lot of time in my restaurant, Zesto, that we had pre-COVID, which was in East Winston-Salem. Tim, as you know, you and I have had countless conversations about this. I mean, we had a great business, great food. I could have put that restaurant anywhere I wanted to in Winston-Salem, and it would have been wildly successful. I intentionally chose to go to East Winston-Salem because I grew up there, and I felt like this was an opportunity to give back.
Yep.
However, my restaurant opening in East Winston-Salem was the first new restaurant to open in East Winston-Salem in 20 years. So that part of our community, when you look at east of 52, so you go to the southeast ward, the east ward proper where my business was, you go up to the northeast ward, a lot of those folks don't believe, and it's not even don't believe, they're actually accurate. I mean, like they're not seeing the level of capital investment that we're seeing in downtown. And so when they see the Link Apartments and they see, Artero and all these different things that are going on down here, or the new Caladium that is so beautiful and everything else, they're wondering, okay, well, what about us? Like, what's going on over here? Or when you go out, if you ever go out around the Stratford Road, Miller Street area, you have 5 grocery stores in walking distance. So you don't have one Harris Teeter. You actually have 2. I mean, you got a Publix and you got a Whole Foods and you got Trader Joe's and you got all these things. And folks in East Winston say, okay, we just got the food line, right? Like, so I think that now we don't have enough time in this show today. There are real economic reasons and variables why that is occurring the way it is. Like, I understand that part. I understand business. But to someone who doesn't understand it at the level that I understand it at, and they're just perceiving it the way they're perceiving it, that's what I feel like is causing some deterioration in trust. They feel left out. They feel forgotten. So when people feel that way, they withdraw. They no longer want to be a part of the story. They no longer want to be a part of the mission. And you cannot limp into the future with half your community. You're going to need everybody to get to where we're talking about.
Exactly.
I completely. So I grew up on the north side of Winston. I went to North Forsyth, and it has a ways to go. I mean, it's like you said, it's just there's not the trust there yet, and it hasn't been built up like downtown.
Or you go to the west side of town and you see Atrium and Novant open 2 new hospitals within one exit of one another. But folks in East Winston who have no transportation a lot of times have a lack of public transportation because the buses don't run like that. They work all day. They're trying to figure out how to get their kid to the doctor, and they don't quite understand how did they get 2 new hospitals. Kernersville got a new hospital, but we've not gotten anything. Again, when you sit down with the folks, and I've sat down with the folks at Novant and Atrium and had this conversation, there are legitimate reasons. I'm not saying there's not reasons for it. There are real reasons for it. But when you live in that environment they live in, and you're just perceiving what's going on, and you don't quite understand, you don't understand those reasons. So I do think it's incumbent upon us that know what's going on, us that are connected, those of us that get invited to the meetings and are in the rooms that everybody wants to be in, it's incumbent upon us to take this information and go back to that community and try to explain to them what's going on. So I mentioned I'm going to lunch today at Hungry Pallet. I'm actually meeting with some city council folks from the East Ward because we're talking about economic development today. So I think the more we can get the right information in the right people's minds, that's how we start moving people in the same direction.
I agree.
A lot more than food, right?
But it's true. Like you said, we do have all the right ingredients here in Winston. We just need to work harder as a group to make it happen.
And there's so many great examples. Like I look at what they've been able to do in Charlotte. Like that, it took a guy like Hugh McCall back in the 90s, who used to be the CEO of Bank of America. He went around and really started getting people on board with this vision in Charlotte. I also think when you go to Charlotte and Raleigh, the other thing I notice about those regions is the communities within the region actually work together. That's another thing we sort of lack in the Triad, which is why when you going back to Eat Drink Triad, people ask me a lot of times, why didn't you just do Eat Drink Winston or just Eat Drink Greensboro? Because I want to be a part of connecting the region. Yeah. I think Winston-Salem has great food, but you know what? Greensboro has great food too. I love Machete. I think that's probably one of the top restaurants in North Carolina. I think High Point has great food. Tim, you love hot dogs. Man, the Dog House is one of the best over in High Point, right?
Okay, yeah.
So how do we also start to connect the dots between our region? And there's a lot of ways to do that, Suzy. I just chose to do it through food because I think that food transcends a lot of problems and issues, and people come together.
You know what?
Around
Food doesn't care what your political beliefs are. Food doesn't care what color you are. Food doesn't care who you love. Food doesn't care about anything but nourishing you.
Yeah.
And we can use that as a vehicle for unity.
Historically, that's how everybody came together over everything, was breaking some bread together.
Exactly. That's exactly. I mean, every civilization going back to the start used food to connect people. And so I thought with Eat Drink Triad, the cool thing that I really love is like when we do Restaurant Week, we have a kickoff to that week. This year we're doing it at Founders. There'll be about 200 people there, and they will be all across the region. And it'll be restaurant owners and foodies and community leaders all coming together. They probably don't do it too often throughout the year, but they come together that night and they have really great conversation. Last year, we had Mayor Wagner from High Point at that event. We had Mayor Joins from Winston-Salem at that event, and we had Mayor Vaughn from Greensboro at that event. And the coolest thing was looking over in the corner and seeing them talking. Mm-hmm. Seeing our Triad mayors having a conversation. In order for us to truly, truly grow and compete, or I don't want to use the word compete because I don't like compete, the way that we can grow and complement what our neighbors are doing in North Carolina, like in Charlotte and in Raleigh, we're going to have to ignore these imaginary lines that divide us. We're going to have to start working together. So like when a community like Greensboro and Asheboro, when they land something as significant as Toyota, 5,000 jobs coming into the region, Winston-Salem needs to be right there in the mix, trying to figure out how do we play a role in this. We didn't win the company, that's fine, but how do we play a role in it?
There should be still enough here to draw the people who are going over there to at least come spend some money.
And Terry Brawley, who you should have on your show one day, he's the economic developer out in Davie County, but he started in government here in Winston. This guy's seen a lot. I mean, like his first job was running the recreation center on Sprague Street, but now he's like a top-notch economic developer for the whole state. I love sitting and talking to him because he just has all these stories and conversations about how regionalism, like when we actually talk and work together, it is so powerful. So one of the things he told me that he's been doing out in Davie County, which is interesting, if you're Toyota and you're going to be in Randolph County, well, obviously there's going to be a lot of companies that supply you that all of a sudden they want to be closer to you. They want to be near that manufacturing facility. However, when you're creating 5,000 jobs like they are, those other suppliers know they can't come in the market and start creating a lot of jobs too because it'll drain the employee pool. The talent will get drained pretty quickly. Terry is so smart, he recognizes this. So he's been setting Davie County up in Moxville to sort of pick up a lot of those jobs because it's about an hour and a half out. So it's far enough out from Randolph County where those companies coming in the area can pick from a new employee pool. And Terry is like proactively positioning that community for that. Well, we need more of that. Like I mean, when Honda Jet is doing what they're doing out at the airport, when Wolfspeed is coming in over in Guilford County and creating their new chip manufacturing plant, those are all opportunities for Winston to still win if we are behaving as a regional community and not just as an individual community.
Yeah, we do have to watch that. I think we are isolationists in a lot of ways, that we are so proud of our town that if it's not happening here, then well, the heck with it. And we can't be that way. We cannot be that way. We have to think triad.
Yeah, I mean, imagine living in your neighborhood and you only just cared about your house.
Yeah,
I mean, the neighborhood's gonna, devalue over time.
Yeah.
I think you have to care about your neighbors, and you check in on them and do those kind of things. But I get it. It's also hard because politically it's difficult. The Triad actually has 3 cities that are strong enough to stand on their own. Like High Point can be a city of its own, and Winston and Greensboro. And, if you're Mayor Vaughn, you're not running for election in Winston-Salem. And if you're Mayor Jones, you're not running for election in Greensboro. So it does causes our elected officials to just be more inwardly focused. And I don't know the solution to that, Tim. I don't know how we recreate our structure in a way where they feel more open to doing that kind of thing. But like even the airport in Greensboro, PTI, that's Winston's airport as well. We don't talk about that. That's probably one of the best regional projects that we've ever done. However, what's happened is Greensboro has almost branded branded the airport as theirs. So like when you go off into another city and you're flying into PTI, what does it say a lot of times on your ticket? GSO. So if you're from New York, you know nothing about this area, you say, well, man, that's Greensboro's airport. And Winston doesn't have one, or we just have like the little smaller one that Burgess mentioned earlier. But in reality, when you look at the Airport Authority Board, Winston-Salem and Forsyth County both have seats on the authority board. We actually put money into what's going on out at PTI. That is a regional project that we should be talking way more about.
It's like a rising tides concept. I mean, a good model to go by would be the triangle. I mean, they label themselves a triangle. You don't hear people say the triad nearly like you do the triangle. And what's brilliant about that is they know that linking, given they've got 3 massive universities there, but by linking the universities, the research, and the businesses together, rising tides. I mean, look at what's happened with Durham over the last 20 years. Durham is a completely different town and is now ranked, top 25 in the country and all these different things.
Fantastic place.
Yes, it is. And it's not to say that it wasn't before, but it was sort of like, it was discussed on the side, but Durham was Duke, and that was it, to some extent. And the 3 of them together have just proliferated biotech and all the other engineering and everything else, and that is the place to go for so many medical research facilities, et cetera. And you'll hear people say the word triangle as much as you'll hear them say anything else. And they want that. And, I think they all have their rivalries because that's a city thing to do, and it's a fun thing on the side. But they know that the working together improves their structure. So I don't know, maybe there's something to that.
Well,
they used to. I used to be a member because what we haven't talked about today, we've talked a lot about Eat Drink Triad, but professionally, I'm in investment banking. That's actually how I make money. But I used to serve on the Wake County Economic Development Board, and what I always thought was cool, they had this cooperative board where they actually reserved spots for other communities. So you had someone from Cary, you had someone from Durham, and so they were being, Burgess, even back, this was 15, 20 years ago, they were being intentional about it being about inclusiveness. That's what they were doing. And I think we do inclusiveness here more reactively. We do it when all of a sudden it makes sense, then we come together. Yeah. But it should be like built into the process and built into the steps. If you go down to Charlotte, I mean, what I love about that region down there, you could be in Kannapolis or Concord or Huntersville, and when you're talking to people, they will tell you you're in Charlotte.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you'll say, well, where is this? This is Charlotte. You're in Charlotte. You're not in Charlotte. No. You're in Huntersville. But now in this region, if you in Curtisville, they gonna make it clear you in Cartersville. Okay? And so it's just a different type of working spirit in those regions. That's all.
Well, maybe it has to do with the fact that, we're in a place now where it makes more sense to do that. I mean, it's my pet theory maybe, but having grown up here and watched the evolution of it, and maybe you would echo this, is that around 20-ish years ago, you saw this pretty boom change in the city in so many different ways. And maybe it took getting to a point like this where it's by no means stagnating. I think the growth is still tremendous, but that we're now at that precipice where it's thinking, okay, well, how do we proliferate from here?
Yeah.
What's the next big step? Because the previous step was building everything that we see, and now that it's here, and my positivity on it is, I feel like people are far more engaged and interested in each other than they were, at least in my experience growing up. You can come downtown and meet all walks of life. If I go in the Remedy, I get all walks of life, and everybody is encouraged and interested in that interaction, and I love that. So seeing that start to grow and change, my hope is that we see, okay, well, what's next step towards big boom change? How does that look? And perhaps it's more of East Winston, and perhaps it's cooperating with the other cities, or maybe even just Kernersville, Clemens, and then feeling like that's a part of Winston as well.
Yeah, because they're in the same county, so
Yep.
it becomes easier to at least collaborate more with the communities that are in the same county. That's a little easier than even stepping beyond that. But when I go to your place, and I agree with you, the energy and the vibe at your place, I mean, you see older people there that are having business meetings. You see younger people there that are just reading and doing, looks like they might be doing homework or whatever. I think also what I'm encouraged by in Winston-Salem with this conversation that we're having, there are a lot of new people moving into town. And they are coming from other communities where they've seen things work a lot differently. And so they're not coming into town just sold on the way we've always done things. And they are changing things, and they are asking questions, right? Like they're pushing back and they're saying, well, why do y'all do it this way? Or, I think, Burgess, as that continues to occur, like we get more influx of new people bringing new ideas from other places. I think that's going to push us in the right direction. And then eventually what's going to happen, and I can't wait to see it, we're going to start getting some of these people on city council. So right now, a lot of people that are on city council, who I love these people. I've worked with them for years. A lot of them are from Winston-Salem. They all grew up here. They've all been here their whole life. We need to get I want to see some people on council from Austin, from Minneapolis. I want to see some people come in from some other places with fresh ideas, new talent, and then help us to move this community in the right direction.
Well, thank you for this wonderful conversation that probably will take us much longer to talk to, build Winston-Salem more out.
It just means we have to have him back and do it again.
There we go.
Oh man, I would love to do this. This is my first visit to the podcast, the Podfathers studio here. So, and it looks great for the listeners that are out there listening. Congratulations, Tim, on what you're doing.
Thank you.
And also congratulations, Suzy, on bringing us this new show and the new content. And just, helping to, you're doing your part too to build up our community.
Thank you. So don't forget about Restaurant Week, October 14th through 20th.
That's right.
And follow them on Eat Drink Triad, and make sure to find us, Twin City Talk, on Instagram and Facebook. And have a good night. The views and opinions portrayed by guests on this podcast are not necessarily those of the distributors and hosting companies. And if you love this podcast, that's great, but don't think about stealing it. Reach out to us and talk about the content, because it is copyrighted.